powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how, PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. NFL free agency, you are allowed to legally tamper today and sign deals that will be announced on Wednesday. One is in for the Eagles. Let's bring in Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast as he joins us to give us some more perspective on the newest Philadelphia Eagle. Mosher, it looks like Hassan Reddick, former Camden High and Temple High star, is coming to Philadelphia. He gets a 3-year, $45 million deal, $30 million guaranteed money, and they get themselves an edge rusher.
Yes, they do. Shouldn't be much of a surprise. He's a name that we talked about last week quite a while. Spent some time talking about the new defensive scheme that Jonathan Gannon has implemented, and that involves taking a linebacker who's normally off the ball and bringing him onto the line of scrimmage, right? Jannard Avery played that on first and second down last year, then came off the field for pass rush. The expectation is that Reddick will be on that line of scrimmage as a fifth player on the line against the run. But then when the Eagles go to rush the passer and they're still in their more traditional four-man front, he's going to be one of the edge rushers, and he replaces the production that they're losing, and they hope to upgrade from with Derek Barnett.
Right. Now, you're adding a guy who's fifth in the NFL in sacks over the last 2 seasons, 23.5. So you're not just adding an edge rusher. You're adding one of the premier edge rushers, and that is something that I think John Gannon would say, well, I don't have to blitz as much because I got a guy that can get to the quarterback without blitzing. So Eagles fans might not like to hear that, but is that the thought process?
Well, in talking with some personnel sources, also Greg Cosell, who's done shows with us, I don't know that I would consider Reddick one of the premier pass rushers. I know that double-digit sacks 2 years is very good. I'm not putting him in T.J. Watt category. He's sort of a one-dimensional player in that he'll rush the passer pretty well off the edges. He's going to be asked at times on first and second down when he's on the line of scrimmage to drop whenever there's a play-action pass or just a pass when they expect run, and he'll have to kind of patrol the deep comebacks, patrol the flats, that areas that typically outside linebackers have to be wary of. He's more equipped to do that than say, Derek Barnett, who's always been a go-forward guy. But he's also a guy who I think has played in some heavily schemed defenses, Hassan Reddick, as far as Phil Snow's defense in Carolina and what he did his last year in Arizona. A lot of blitzing, which Jonathan Gannon's not going to do. A lot of scheme to attack protection breakdowns, and he played with some pretty good pass rushers too. Obviously, Brian Burns this last year in Carolina. Mm-hmm. So you hope that you get the double-digit sacks. We'll have to see. He's a good player. Again, good motor, explosion off the edge. I wouldn't call him like a 3-tool type or 4-tool type player, but it's not like those kind of guys were available in free agency.
Right, and I mean, obviously you have him and Sweat and Graham and Milton Williams, and, he just adds another dimension to that line. But I would imagine, Moshe, that doesn't negate that they would still target that position with their draft choices.
Yeah, and they can target, if they're trying to upgrade pass rush, they can target a defensive end who's not the strong side linebacker, something like you're saying Brandon Graham or Josh Sweat. They can target a defensive tackle who's got some pass rush, or they could still even get a guy who they see as a younger, more dynamic version of Reddick, who might just need some time to develop, but be that strong side linebacker that Reddick is going to do at least for next year, and we'll see for the future. You know how these 3-year deals work, Mike. You can probably get out of them after 1 or 2 years. So we'll see what kind of staying power that Reddick's able to have.
Right. Well, he was a guy that has been through this most, right? He's had 12.5 sacks in Arizona and could only get a 1-year, $6 million deal the following year, and he gets 11 sacks last year. So there's no doubt that, he got to the quarterback a bunch over the last 2 years. We'll see if that's how he's used here. Now, he's been listed as an outside linebacker. Now they use the term edge rusher. I mean, so we're going to see him with the hand down, standing up, doing a lot of different things, you would imagine.
I don't know that he's going to play with his hand down. I think he's going to be stand-up linebacker in their 5-man front on first and second down. And then when they rush the passer on the edges, I imagine you'll see him kind of spread out, maybe a little bit of wide 9 look and still a stand-up look rushing from the edges. Now, if they put his hand in the dirt, maybe they do it. But I would imagine if they're going to use him the way he's been used and how people think that he should be used, it's more of a stand-up outside rusher, edge rusher, as you just laid out.
Mm-hmm. So obviously I would imagine it's a pretty good first foray into free agency here. I mean, you could say, hey, they got an impact type of player to start free agency off.
Yeah, I mean, look, looks like Derek Barnett won't be back, and Derek Barnett never produced double-digit sacks for the Eagles. He didn't really live up to what they were hoping he was going to be. He struggled with injuries. He struggled with his weight at times. Reddick has more – interestingly, Reddick went a pick before Barnett. He went to Arizona at 13 and then the Eagles took Barnett at 14. So you're talking about two guys who have probably, clearly the way Arizona used Reddick for his first 3 years was not the right way as an off-ball linebacker, and then they discovered something late in him as just a pass rusher. So you hope that he comes in here and gives you it sort of kills two birds with one stone. He gives you that fifth guy in the line that you're looking for, and then he gives you a little bit more explosion on the edges than you got from Derek Barnett. But the key, as you mentioned, Mike, is he only got a 1-year deal last year, coming off a 12.5 sack year, and now he's on his third team in 3 years. So we always say the league tells you what you are. Your contract tells you what you are. So he's a good player. He has a chance to come into his own here, but anyone who kind of comes away like, oh my God, we got Hassan Reddick championship. No, you got to this is free agency. You got to understand what you've lost compared to what you've gained.
I'm glad you said something that I hit on earlier. I said, while he's top 5 in sacks over the last 5 years, I don't look at him as a guy who is on the same level as those other guys. I don't think he's a guy that opposing teams are game planning for. They're not like, all right, we got to figure out what the heck we're doing with Hassan Reddick. He's a guy who happens to just have a motor and works hard and gets to the quarterback, but he does a lot of one-on-one, and as you said, he's been schemed that way. So don't think you're getting you're not getting Lawrence Taylor or Reggie White in terms of the sack numbers might say good sack, but I just don't say, they found their face of their defense.
Yeah, I mean, we've been through this before. Not that I'm saying apples to apples here. I'm just giving you an example of what we're talking about. We've seen Jason Babin here rack up, 18.5 sacks and just sacks, and then realize that that's really all he could do. He couldn't tackle anybody. He couldn't do anything else. I mean, you could run right at him, and he was so one-dimensional that Jason Babin, people got tired of him real quick because if he wasn't getting 2 or 3 sacks in a game, then he was basically just a liability being out there at times. So you hope that Hassan Reddick that's not an issue with him. You hope Jonathan Gannon gets more tools. It's a better all-around defense. But to your point, you're right. He's a good pass rusher. He has explosion, not a premier Pro Bowl, all-pro type guy, at least not yet.
All right, so Hassan Reddick is part of the defense, and that signing will be official on Thursday. Do you think it was a fair number? $45 million, $30 million in guaranteed? What do you think?
Yeah, when Emmanuel Ogbah, who is another player I know that the Eagles had kind of scouted and looked at and determined that he could be a player in their defense, he got from the Dolphins a 4-year, $65 million deal, right? So he got about 16.5 APY. I don't think he's as good of a pass rusher as Reddick. Now, he's maybe a little bit, bigger. He can be a little more versatile. You might be able to kick him inside. So maybe he does more than just rush the passer for Miami. But I think he's a guy who's also been on 3 teams in 3 years. So when he got that much money, I thought Reddick might get more than 16.5. So the fact that the Eagles landed him, Hassan Reddick, at less per year and less years, 3 years, only 15 per year, to me in free agency says that while that might be an overpayment for who you are, but as a free agent, that's actually a pretty good deal for the Eagles, I would say.
Yeah, I thought the money was fair, right? I thought, again, just like him, he's a solid player, and I thought the money was solid. I don't think it was oh, man, you overpaid to get him. I think you got fair market value. It's just look, I think Howie Roseman can say, hey, if you don't like me, here, take that deal and judge me.
I would say that's fair. I mean,
right?
Look, and you talked about Howie. You knew he had to do something in free agency. He said he needed to improve the pass rush. We had reported on Inside the Birds that dropped today that Adam and I had spoke to a lot of people lately who were interacting with Howie or had talked to him or been around him in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and all of them kind of talked about sensing the urgency with him. Remember, he only has a year left on his contract, I believe, and he knew the defense was far away from where it needs to be. So we talked about this. We felt like a signing like this was imminent, and maybe another one. I mean, he's got to come home with at least one, if not two, safeties.
Right, I was going to follow up with, so if they did something defensively in free agency, where's that? Is that a corner or a safety?
I haven't heard much on the corner market, surprisingly, which doesn't mean they're not in on it. It's just not info that I've been able to get. They have done their homework on safeties. They've done their homework on Marcus Williams. I expect them to be, when I say in on Marcus Williams, I'm sure they'll make an offer. He's with the Saints right now. The Saints are trying to get Deshaun Watson, so they're not trying to rebuild. I expect that the Saints, even with the salary cap hell that they are in, will try to make a very competitive attempt to try to re-sign Marcus Williams. So if you're good, now think about it. Quandre Diggs, who's older and coming off an injury, just got $39 million for 3 years from Seattle. That's $13 million a year. So a guy like Marcus Williams, who's much younger and pretty good, you got to think his price tag is going to be anywhere from $15, $18 million a year, and that's a lot.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. Eagles sign Reddick. Now, I guess the next thing you're waiting on would be are they going to jump into this wide receiver pool, which got a little thinner. A couple guys got franchised. Some guys are already traded. Cooper never made the market. He ended up getting traded. So there's less attractive receivers than there was at the start, but would that be the next area?
Yeah, I mean, we know the Eagles have looked in that area. We know that they've checked around. I think it's interesting. I mean, the Christian Kirk contract, and the Eagles were they had some interest in him, but no way they were going to give him $20-something million a year that he got from Jacksonville. But Jacksonville signing Christian Kirk makes you wonder if they're going to bring back DJ Chark. And if DJ Chark hits the market, which I guess he has at this point, then perhaps you will see the Eagles make an overture there. Juju Smith-Schuster is a guy I know that they're interested in. I think Juju's market, from what I sense, Mike, will kind of be controlled by what the Steelers want to do. You saw they signed Mitchell Trubisky today. Most teams I spoke to on Juju, they like him, but they like him on a one-year deal because he only played 5 games last year. He's coming off the shoulder surgery.
That would be a second 1-year deal.
Right. If the Steelers would go 2 years to keep him, which I know that they at least have interest in keeping him, if they go 2 years, I don't know if there's a team that's going to match 2 or go more. Maybe the Eagles do, maybe they don't. I don't know. But it feels like right now, if the Steelers go more than 1 year to keep Juju, they might be able to retain him. So we'll see.
You look at Juju inside or outside, or both?
I think both. I think if you're the Eagles and you're your 11 personnel and you have Juju, you probably play him at the X and you move Devontae around a little bit, and Quez is in the slot, and we'll see what happens with Jalen Reagor if that happens. But if you're in a spread, if you're 4 wide, you're probably going to move Juju inside in the slot.
I was talking about this before you came on. Is I like Watkins and Reagor. Not that I love Reagor, but I know he's going to be in the mix. To battle it out as slot guys and let those two go to camp and say, "This is open, you two." And find a guy to play that other outside. That, to me, is best case scenario.
Yeah, I don't know if they see it that way, because I don't know if you want your former first-round pick potentially then being your 4th receiver, which is a bench player who is a special teams player. I think they would just move on if they added a wide receiver. I think that they would probably look to try to move Jalen Reagor and just say, hey, we got our added receiver. We have Devontae Smith. We have Quez Watkins. We can always draft a guy in this year's draft. We got plenty of picks. And then we'll go from there and see if we can't get something for Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, I'm. That'd be interesting. I mean, if they can find a taker for him. What's been Mitch Trubisky, by the way, Pittsburgh. I like the Trubisky move. I wasn't a Trubisky fan in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I think him sitting the year out and watching in a good organization, I think that he's going to surprise people, and I think he lands in a good spot for him.
How many times do we say that sometimes for quarterbacks, it's about their coaching staff and their environment and their culture as much as it is about their own talent, right? So, like, if Patrick Mahomes had landed in Jacksonville, do you think he'd be this amazing quarterback right now, or would he have struggled like Trevor Lawrence did last year? So I agree. I don't look at Mitchell Trubisky and think top 5, top 10 quarterback right there, but I look at the environment and say they can run the ball, they can play defense, and they can manage Mitchell Trubisky. Will they win a Super Bowl? Probably not, but he's probably a bridge to their next quarter anyway. Could they be successful like the Titans have been with Ryan Tannehill with Trubisky leading the way? Yeah, they probably could be.
No, you're right. Like when we were growing up, the quarterback didn't play. The wide receiver, remember, you had to wait till their third year to finally get some production out of them. Now it's like if you can't play in your first season or two, you stink. You're never getting any better. Trubisky, to me, is a classic. He was overdrafted because of his tools. The guy was 29 and 21. I mean, he wasn't a loser. They won games with him. I just think he was in an offense that didn't have a lot of help for him, and he probably shouldn't have been out on the field that early in his career. He did not have a lot of college experience.
Right.
But I think he has the tools, and sitting there in Buffalo for a year probably helps him. And he goes to a team that has a good running game. So
yeah,
I think that's a good spot there. I'm on remote today, so I haven't got a chance to see a lot of the different things. But has anything else major happened? I did see Sheriff go to Jacksonville, 2 linemen in Cincinnati. So Cincinnati is added to the line. That might be the 2 underrated moves of the day.
Yeah, well, and Jacksonville just giving out money to everybody who's a free agent, from Christian Kirk to the middle. They signed a middle linebacker from Atlanta who's very good. I have trouble pronouncing his name. It's like Foye Okoulen. But can you imagine being Doug Peterson and seeing your team just shell out $15 million a year for a middle linebacker? That's got to be culture shock for him, man.
Right, exactly. Oh, and by the way, Tom Brady came back. I forgot about that.
Oh yeah, how about that?
Jeez. Now, are you on a scale of 1 to 10? How surprised?
0.0.
Yeah, it happened yesterday, and I was like, okay, that was to be expected. Some people were a little upset the timing. They thought he tried to overshadow March Madness, but he had to do it yesterday to get them ready for free agency.
Of course. Absolutely. They probably would have lost their center, Ryan Jensen, if he didn't do it. So, yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've got free agency underway. Not as fast and furious as you might have thought, but –
well, I thought in general the class of free agents this year was really nothing that great. When Christian Kirk, who's like a number 2 or 3 receiver, for a lot of teams he'd probably be number 3, right? Yeah. Like if you put him on the Vikings, he's not better than Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, so he'd be the number 3 receiver there. That guy just made $20 million a year.
Crazy.
Like that just shows you how crazy it is.
Speaking of the Vikings, Kirk Cousins must be the nicest human being.
I think it's a great year for quarterbacks to be needed. That's what I think.
You're right about that. But
there.
It's like they watch him and they got to hear what everybody says. He's good, but you can have him. And they're just at the end of this contract, ready to get out of it. And they're like, let's extend him for another go around.
Well, would you rather have Kirk Cousins or Mitchell Trubisky if you didn't have a top 10 pick?
Well, for the money, I'd probably rather pay Trubisky when I'm paying him.
Kirk Cousins he's actually put up some pretty good numbers in this league.
No doubt.
He's way better than Trubisky's ever done. Yeah.
No doubt. All right. Well, Geoff
Mosher.
Mosher.
How new coaches are also. They're a little bit arrogant. They think they're going to come in and be the guy, They think they're going to come in, just fix the offensive line and be the guy.
With that arrogance, I would think that you would think that Trubisky has more tools and talent than Cousins does.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying with that.
You're the number 2 overall pick against a 4th rounder.
Yeah. Well, I just, you're the Vikings and you've got some really good weapons. And again, Kirk's put up some really good numbers in the league. He's made the playoffs before. I think he's got some playoff wins. So one more hurrah.
Well, the furthest they ever went was when they had Case Keenum.
Well, that's true. That is true.
That says something there. All right, Geoff Mosher, I know we're all keeping our eye on what Howie Roseman will do next, and they have signed Hassan Reddick, so that's the first move in the Eagles all season. We'll see what's next, and, of course, there will be something next, and when there is something, Football at 4 will have it right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And check out the latest Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. Geoff Mosher, take care, bud.
All right, take care, Mike.